Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. I've got 3 shout outs in today's video coming up at the very end, right before we do our dad joke, so stay tuned for that. Today we're going to be talking about some of the games from yesterday, week number 8 in the world of college football. Before I get into that, let me quickly send out a congratulations to the Astros and the Braves, who will be playing in the World Series this year starting on Tuesday night. Of course, games 1 and 2 on Tuesday and Wednesday will be in Houston before they head to Atlanta for games 3, 4, and 5. But I've been telling all of my baseball friends that I work with since 2019 that I thought 2021 was going to be the year the Braves would make some noise. Fortunately, I was right, but I got to be honest, if you follow the channel, I did a weekly Braves review pretty much every single week here on the channel all season long, with the exception of the All-Star week, because with the All-Star game going on, you only play 3 games that week, so there really ain't a whole lot to talk about. But outside of that week, I pretty much did a Braves review all year long, and even back in April and May and June and July when the Braves were playing terrible, I kept saying they would win the division, they'd win the division, and I thought that because even though they were playing so bad, the division was pathetic, so I knew they were still going to win the division. But there was times where I thought to myself, well, they're going to win the division, but they're not going to the World Series. But it was because of the fact Acuna got hurt, and he was the heart and soul of the Braves team this year, and he was their leadoff hitter, and the Braves don't, really have a true leadoff hitter, so you lose your heart and soul and your leadoff hitter, and you had all those injuries in the rotation this year. And then at one point in time this year, nobody in the bullpen was pitching good except for Luke Jackson. Now, Luke Jackson in the NLCS was hot garbage, but you can't give up on him because A.J. Minter and Tyler Matzik and Will Smith are all left-handed. You need somebody from the right side coming out of the bullpen. But in the regular season, Luke Jackson's ERA was 1.98, which is phenomenal. But in the NLCS, he was terrible. So let's just hope the Braves can finish it off and win the World Series. And I know I said back when the playoffs started that I thought the Dodgers have missed their window, and I still think that. They've had the best roster in baseball for at least 5 years, and they've got 1 World Series. And that just goes to show that no matter what sport or sports you like, no matter what team or teams you like, if your team ever wins a championship in any sport, you better cherish it and appreciate it, because it does not matter who your coach is and what sport it is. It's hard to win a championship at any time. I think the Dodgers have missed their window. I don't think Seager is back next year. I don't think Knebel, who's one of their best relievers, is back next year. Will Justin Turner be back? Will Max Scherzer be back? If Clayton Kershaw is healthy at the beginning of the season, is he going to be the old Kershaw or the Kershaw we saw this year? Because this year's Kershaw, he wasn't dominant before he got injured. So I think the Dodgers have missed their window, but congratulations to the Astros and the Braves. And if you're a baseball fan, look forward to the World Series coming up starting on Tuesday night. And, of course, we'll talk more about baseball and some of the changes that may be coming to the Braves coming up after the World Series. But first, let's just enjoy the World Series. But on to yesterday's games. I know on Friday I talked about how there wasn't a lot of, good games on the schedule, which there wasn't when you look at the schedule. But then, of course, there's always those games that turn out to be good games. And when you look at the schedule, you're like, that game's not going to be any good. And it ends up being good. Oklahoma beat Kansas 35-23. They were actually down at halftime 10-0 because their offense was just, they were dead. They looked like they wanted to be anywhere except for Lawrence, Kansas, playing that football game. But they were actually only up 28-23 and scored a touchdown with like 2 minutes to go in the game to make it 35-23. It's hard to believe that Kansas had a 12-win season, the only one in program history back in 2007. So it's been 14 years, but I bring that up because their current coach in year number 1, Lance Leipold, came from Buffalo, and I think Lance Leipold is a good coach. So I think if Kansas gives him time and he stays there, I think he could give them a 10-win season coming up here in about 4 or 5 years. He is a good football coach in my opinion. But this year's Oklahoma team reminds me of the 2016 Clemson team. And I'm not saying it's going to be the same ending result, but Oklahoma yesterday, when they were up 28-23 with less than 2 minutes to go, looked like they were fixing to have their 6th game this year out of 8 that was decided by a touchdown or less. And if you rewind to the 2016 season, Clemson kicked off that season by beating Auburn by, I believe, 7 points. It may have been 6 or 7. Then they beat Troy by 6 points. Yes, Troy by 6 points. Then they beat Louisville by 6 points. They beat NC State by 7 points. And they beat Florida State by 3 points. So come early November of 2016, even though Clemson played for the national championship in 2015, it looked like 2016 they were bad, especially beating Troy by 6 points. I mean, Auburn and Louisville and NC State and Florida State were all decent that year. And Troy wasn't bad, but, they're not a Power 5 team. So Clemson was winning a lot of close games, and it looked like they just didn't have it. And then all of a sudden, as the year went on, they got better and better and better. And come playoff time, of course, we know they won their first of 2 national championships under Dabo Swinney so far. Well, Oklahoma this year has basically been the same way. Every single week, it's like, man, Oklahoma's not any good. And you thought they turned it around last week when I think they won by 3 touchdowns until yesterday they played Kansas, and they ended up winning by 12, but like I said, they were down at halftime, and they were up 28-23 with only about 2 minutes to go in the game and scored that late touchdown. So you got to wonder, are they going to be able to turn it around now? And I'm still wondering what's happened to Spencer Rattler. I mean, obviously, Caleb Williams is their quarterback for the future, but you can't blame it on Lincoln Riley. I mean, let's look. Since he's been there, he's had Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts, especially Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts came to Oklahoma because he lost his job at Bama because he couldn't throw. And he came to Oklahoma and actually became a pretty good passing quarterback. But Baker and Kyler both transferred there from other schools, and they both got better there as the year went on, and they played longer under Lincoln Riley. So we know it's not Lincoln Riley. So a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school that is slowly getting worse, what's the issue? I don't know. But maybe we'll figure it out one day, but obviously Williams is their quarterback. And then, of course, in another noon game, we had Cincinnati beating Navy by the score of 27-20. I know I said on Friday that I thought Navy might could hang with them only because of the offense they run, and it was 10-10 at one time, and I thought, man, Navy is going to hang with them. And then Cincinnati got up 27-10, and I said, it's over with now. Navy's not going to use that triple option and get back in this game, but they did. Got it back to 27-20, even recovered the onside kick, and then threw the interception. So Cincinnati escapes with a win by the score of 27-20. When you play those triple option teams, it does not matter what their record is. That triple option is always tough to defend, and it's always tough to get in a rhythm when you're on offense against those teams because they'll keep the ball for 8-9 minutes. And then if you get the ball and you're 3 and out, well, they're back on the field for another 8 or 9 minutes. So it might be halftime and you might have had 2 possessions, and you just can't get in a rhythm in a situation like that. But they're still undefeated. And then in an embarrassment game, a game where both teams should be ashamed of themselves to be that pitiful, on offense. The longest game in Division I football history. Illinois beat Penn State 20-18 in 9 overtimes. I know before the season started we talked about how they were changing the overtime rules, trying to make the game shorter. Well, it backfired because at the end of regulation it was Illinois 10, Penn State 10, and then in the first overtime both teams got a field goal to make it 13-13. In the second overtime, both teams got a field goal to make it 16-16. And then in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh overtime, neither team could convert a two-point conversion. So you've got two FBS teams that had 5 overtimes. That's 5 possessions, and neither one could get 2 yards. That's pathetic. So the NCAA enforcing the making you go for 2 starting in third overtime backfired because these two teams couldn't even get 2 yards, and that's an embarrassment. But finally, in the 8th overtime, both teams got the 2-point conversion, and then in the 9th overtime, Illinois got their 2-point conversion, and Penn State didn't. So Illinois wins. Of course, they're in their first year under head coach Brett Bielema. They were picked to win 3 games when the year started, and now they have won 3 games. So we'll see if they win any more and do better than what they were originally supposed to do by all the Vegas insiders this year. And then in a complete opposite game where there was no defense at all, we had Wake Forest beating Army by the score of 70-56. Wake Forest had 9 touchdowns on offense and then 1 on special teams when Army decided to fake a punt, and they had a receiver that was wide open, and the punter waited too long to throw it, and Wake picked it off and ran it back, and that was the difference in the game, 70-56. And then this game I just wrote down because if you follow the channel, you'll know before the season started I said that I thought the Hokies coach Justin Fuente was in his last year because I think he's going to get fired after the season. Well, they lost again yesterday. They lost to Syracuse by the score of 41-36. So I still think Justin Fuente is on the hot seat, especially considering when the year started, they said this was going to be the best passing offense they've had since Fuente's been there. And their passing offense is atrocious. And then we got Clemson 17, Pittsburgh 27. This game was the same old story. I think I even said it on the channel this week that I thought if Pittsburgh got to 20, Clemson was beat. And, of course, that would have been the case because Clemson scored 17. But the difference in the game was Will Shipley was wide open. And just like last week, when Justin Ross was wide open and dropped it, in this game, Will Shipley was wide open and he dropped it. So that was a touchdown that was off the board because the receiver just flat out dropped it. And then Pittsburgh had a pick 6 on defense. That 14-point swing was the difference in the game, and that's the reason why DJ got taken out of the game. If you didn't see the game or only saw a little bit, that's the reason why, because DJ, yes, he had 5 or 6 bad throws. What quarterback doesn't? It doesn't matter how good you are. No quarterback in the history of time ever makes every great throw. You're going to make some boneheaded plays because we're human. We all do it. But he had 5 or 6 throws that were bad. But he had 3 balls that were just flat out dropped. The one Galloway dropped probably would have been for maybe a 3-yard gain. But I think Galloway has dropped every pass that's thrown his way this year. And then I think Joe also dropped one that would have been a short gain. But the one Shipley dropped was a flat-out touchdown. He just dropped. But DJ came out of the game because the pick 6 was on a shovel pass where the defender was in front of DJ before he threw it. So he shouldn't have thrown it. There's no way that he didn't see the defender. He could have had his eyes closed and probably felt the defender. So he shouldn't have thrown it. So he got taken out of the game for making that bad, boneheaded decision. But even when the backup, Tyson Pumachan, came in, the offense wasn't any better. And if you listen to Tony Elliott's post-game press conference, he was in a roundabout way saying that we don't trust Tyson to throw the ball. So, of course, he's not going to play. But then again, when your receivers drop about 4 or 5 passes a game, there ain't no point in throwing the ball because they ain't going to catch it. I don't know if I've ever seen an offense go from as good as Clemson has been the last 5 years to being this dreadfully bad in one offseason. And everybody wants to blame all the problems on DJ, but of course, he's the quarterback. You know, when you're doing good, the quarterback gets all the praise. When you're struggling, the quarterback gets all the blame. But the offensive line cannot pass block. The wide receivers just cannot catch. And then DJ makes bad throws. So we just can't put it all together. You can't blame DJ. It's the whole offensive scheme this year. But I don't know why. I don't know what the issue is. I've been saying all year long, I don't know what it is. But I thought it would get better because Dabo's been there now for over a decade. And every player that's came to Clemson has progressively gotten better under Dabo's tutelage. So we know Dabo can recruit players. And we know Dabo can make the players get better. But for some reason, this year's team, it just hasn't happened. So I don't know what the issue is, but if you're now 4-3 on the season and you're pretty much scoring 17 to 21 points every week, that's what you're going to keep doing. You've got Florida State next week. You might lose again next week. But they've got to figure out what the issue is because they've got too much talent to be this bad. Tony Elliott's been there for a long time now, so it's not a Tony Elliott thing. This is not his first time calling plays. They just got to figure out what the issue is. If it's something off the field that nobody knows about, they better get it fixed because otherwise next year is going to be the same way. But Tyson Pumachan's been there for 3 years now, and we've seen Dabo before change quarterbacks when he thought the backup was better. So if Dabo thought Tyson was better, he would be the quarterback. So even if you think DJ's struggling, he's still your best option. So right now, I think the way the offensive line can run block, but not pass block, and the receivers can't get open, and when they do, they can't catch, I think you're just better off running the ball. I'd rather run the ball every play than try to throw the ball. It's either going to be a sack, a bad pass, or a dropped pass. And then we had Lsu and Ole Miss. I know I said on Friday that I was, anxious to see that game, to see what LSU would do, knowing that Orgeron is no longer going to be the coach. And they came out and jumped out to a 7-0 lead, and I was like, oh yeah, they're going to hang with them. And then that was it. Ole Miss won 31-17. And then we had Oklahoma State, who was undefeated on the season, suffering their first loss of the season, losing to the Iowa State Cyclones by the score of 24-21. So the Oklahoma State defense was still pretty good. They just didn't get quite enough from the offense. But of course, we know Iowa State came out this year in the top 10. Now, they haven't had quite the season they thought they were going to have, but they're still 5-2 this season, so it's still not a terrible season. But they're nowhere near what they thought they were going to be. And then we had Wisconsin beating Purdue by the score of 30-13. So the week after Purdue beats Iowa, they looked terrible against Wisconsin. Now Wisconsin started out 1-3 this year, but they've won 3 games in a row now, which is good for them because they play Iowa next week, I do believe. But Wisconsin did the best thing they could have done, and that was run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, and keep the ball out of overrated Graham Mertz's hands. I think he was 5 for 8 for 52 yards in that game yesterday. And then we had Tennessee and Bama, and I know I said this week that I thought Tennessee had the offense to hang with them for a while, and they did. It was actually 24-17 at one time, and then Bama pulled away with it, and the final score ended up being 52-24. But if you didn't watch the game, you might think Bama dominated, and it was actually a good game for a long time. And then Bama in the fourth quarter put up 28 points to make the score look like it was a blowout, when in reality it wasn't. And then we had Notre Dame beating USC 31-16. So just like I said this week, the more Notre Dame wins, the more that helps out Cincinnati, since that will be the biggest win on Cincinnati's schedule, unless SMU stays undefeated, because right now they're undefeated. So as of right now, you would have undefeated Cincinnati against undefeated SMU for their conference championship. And of course, if SMU finishes undefeated, they'll probably be top 15 by the time the season ends. But of course, right now, Cincinnati's biggest win is the win over Notre Dame. And then I also wrote down the game between NC State and Miami, because of course with NC State beating Clemson, they are now the favorite to win their side of the ACC. But they lost to Miami by 1 point by the score of 31-30. So of course NC State has 2 losses now on the season, but only 1 in conference, because their other loss came to Mississippi State. But of course they play Wake Forest, I believe, coming up in 3 weeks. So more than likely the winner of that game is going to win their side of the ACC, unless something drastic happens in the next 3 weeks leading up to that game. And my shout outs today, I've got one going out to Bridget, who is a big Clemson fan. She's also a fan of the Mid Carolina Rebels, which is the local high school team where she is. Then I've got one going out to my man Miles, who lives in Ohio. Then I also have one going out to my man Zach, who lives in the upstate of South Carolina. And all 3 of them are Clemson fans, and all 3 of them, despite the loss yesterday, wanted me to say go Tigers, and thank all 3 of you so much for subscribing to the channel. And don't forget, now that you are subscribed, if you comment, you are eligible for our giveaway that we'll be having when we get to 1,000 subscribers. All you have to do is subscribe and comment, and you are eligible. And the more you comment, the better your chances are of winning. And don't forget to please give the video a thumbs up as well. I would appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. Someone stole my mood ring, and I don't know how I feel about it. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.